Hello everyone. Today I'd like to talk about We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks, a poem which talks about the youth rebellion. We Real Cool is a short poem written by Gwendolyn Brooks. To be more specific, this poem is about what the seven young pool players thought about themselves. The poem is consistent with their words in a direct way. Gwendolyn Brooks is an American poet who wrote many crafts for her community. This poem illustrates the lifestyle for some African American boys and shows the author's worries and concerns about the young people who are like the players, as well as the society they are in. Now I'd like to begin with my first point about the background of the short poem. This poem is written when the author once passed by a pool hall at school time several years ago. She saw a bunch of teenagers who was shooting the pools during the school time. She felt curious about those players and wondered their views about themselves, which motivated her to write this short poem for them. Now I just discussed about the background. Now let's move on to my next point, which is about my analysis for this short poem. The first two sentences show their attitudes toward their lives as teenagers who quitted school. They chose to hang out in the pool hall while others were studying in the school. They believe what they did is really a cool thing which can make them become unique among their peers. The third and the fourth sentences illustrate their rebellion. They try to use some weird ways, like lurking and streaking, to become themselves, and they hate following the rules and the ordinary views from others and the society. Next three sentences show their satisfaction about their lives, which is associated with alcohol, music, and games. Just like some games like shooting pools. Here we can tell that they treat themselves so casually that they refuse to accept the principle about right or wrong. For the last sentence, I think it is a highlight for the entire poem. It shows the author's attitudes for those young people. Obviously, we can tell that she discourages about their behaviors, which is really a waste of their time. Also, she feels worried and angry with them. Here, the author doesn't mean what they are doing is just something fatal, but such kind of waste will lead them to decadence at last. Now I've discussed the main point for each sentence. Let's move on to my next point, which is about the theme behind this short poem and how Gwendolyn expresses her views about those players. I still remember a famous writer, Alexander Pushkin, once wrote in his novel about happiness, which is doing what you should do when you are young and doing what you should do when you get mature. I think that's the reason the author wrote this poem, to show her concerns and warnings about the youth. These teenagers, like poor players, didn't do the appropriate thing for their ages. It is always believed that the life belonging to the young people should be unique and different. However, as juveniles, their life shouldn't be totally associated with alcohol and games, because this is really a great time for them to explore the world. Life cannot repeat once they miss it. So the author thinks they will die soon, not physically, but mentally. To my surprise, this poem depicts the rebellion of young people in a different way. The author expresses her emotion directly by the words of poor players. By the short poem, the author not only feels sad about the teenagers like poor players, but also feel annoyed with their attitudes toward their lives. They need to cherish the life as young people rather than wasting time on something bad. Also, they need to cherish their rights of acquire knowledges to build up their personalities instead of doing something meaningless to make themselves just look cool. However, only by the tragedy from these boys can we feel how pitiful they are to live in such kind of environment. They cannot be guided and educated even though they are making mistakes which will put themselves into troubles in the future. Actually, the author also feels really unsatisfied with such kind of community for African American teenagers. There's no doubt that such kind of situation needs to be changed by every part of the society. Now let's move on to my last point, which is what I learned about young people according to this short poem. From the short poem, we can tell that the life as a teenager is fascinating but also dangerous, because that age is an important link between childhood and adult life. It is normal for these teenagers to chase for the life about being mature, but before that, they really need to learn what mature truly means. It is not just about being cool, but about the ability to take the obligation and cultivate their special skills. Everyone should spend this age in an appropriate way. After all, it is a beautiful age which deserves our efforts to make it meaningful and colorful. Moreover, the help from their families, friends, and educational systems is essential for those young people. They need to be corrected and guided when they face with some difficulties to adjust themselves. Also, they need the equality instead of bias to get the same opportunities as other students in school. Maybe that's what the author really wants to tell us through her short poem. Today, we discussed about We Real Cool. We can feel the author's warnings for those teenagers as well as for the whole community. In conclusion, everyone needs to try their best to improve themselves when they are young in order to search for their happiness for their whole life. These teenagers should get essential help from others as well. Anyway, what the author wants to warn all of us through the seven boys is that as a young man, there is no time for us to waste on rebellion. So never do something which will make ourselves feel regretful. Thanks for listening and hope everyone can gain something from this poem.